Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I ask for an approval of the agenda. Am I doing is that a motion to approve? A motion to approve the agenda. Does anybody want to make? Thank you, Councillor Kim. Thank you, Councillor Tom. All those in favor?
Comments.
Sorry, are there any questions or comments?
Yes. I'd like to make an amendment. Sorry, just give me 1 sec here. That the following additional item be added to the agenda. That we close session. I guess item 1, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including a town or local board employee, regarding staff performance.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Do we need a vote? We need a seconder for that. Councillor Humphreys.
Questions or comment on the amendment?
Any questions or comments on the amendment to the agenda? All those in favor?
No vote on the main motion.
Then we thank you. We're going back to the approval of the agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
As amended,
As
just a vote.
As amended? We're just voting. All those in favor? Thank you.
Is that carried?
So that carried. Sorry, I haven't done this in a long time. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. I'll start with Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Number 6 and number 11.
Thank you. Mayor Dawn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 1, please, and item 9.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Item 16, item 4, and item 3, and item 5.
Thank you. Councillor Abel?
I'm fine at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys? Might have been pulled, thanks. Thanks. Councillor Tom?
I'm fine as well, Madam Chair.
Councillor Kim?
Mine has been pulled. I'm fine, thank you.
Councillor Perry?
Nothing for me.
Thank you. Let me just check. So we have 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is not pulled, 8 is not pulled, 9. I would like 10. 11.
It's been pulled.
Thank you. 12 and 13. And also 14.
You want to pull them or not pull them?
I want them pulled.
So they're not pulling? You're pulling?
Yeah.
Okay, so
So I'm pulling. Is there anything left?
so if you're pulling 12, 13, and 14, right? We have 2, 7, 8,
And 11.
15.
I'm also pulling 11.
You're pulling 11. It's already
Oh, it's already pulled. That's right.
So we have 2, 7.
Thank you. We need a motion to approve the items that haven't been pulled,
You pulled them.
which would be 2, 7, 8, 13,
No, it's not 13. You pulled that.
and I pulled 14, and 15. All those in favor?
No, we need to move it.
Oh, we need a mover for those. Thank you, Councillor Tom, Councillor Kim. All those in favor? Thank you. Our first delegation tonight is Darcy Romaine, resident of Aurora. Temporary access right, excuse me, to adjacent landowner's property. Thank you.
Mayor Daw, members of Town Council, thank you very much for your audience today. As you heard, I'm a...
Sir, have you been told that you have 5 minutes?
5 minutes, I understand. I would be succinct. I'm here today because my home is in need of repair. I had roofers at my property, and the roofers told me, as they were repairing the roof, that I needed access to the side of my home. The documents that I have prepared or have put before you show my home. first photograph shows my house at the top. You can see that there's a little bit of shingling that goes down the side of my home, and that shingling is brown. That is the old shingles that are in need of repair and replacement. The photograph below shows the amount of distance between my home on the left and my neighbor's home on the right. It is 6 feet in width. My neighbor has erected a chain link fence, which is 4 feet in width, leaving me with approximately, I have 25 inches precisely between the two homes. Now the problem is, as you can see from the next photograph, a series of photographs, I have an eave trough that has fallen. I only have 25 inches of width, and if you were to look up to the top of bricks, my soffit goes out 25 inches or so. So there is absolutely no place to put a ladder for the roofers to access the roof. On April 23rd, I tried to speak with my neighbor, and I provided him with written notice letting him know that the roofers needed access to his side of the laneway. I hand-delivered it, I put it on his door. I came out later that night, I saw him, I tried to speak to him, and he turned his back on me without any comment at all and closed his door, turned off the lights, and shut the garage door, wanting nothing to do with me. He's a fellow who's very zealous with respect to his property rights. I made sure that the roofers did not go on his property at all, and I researched the matter to see what recourse I had. What I can find is that under Section 132 of the Municipal Act, this local municipality and all the local municipalities are able to authorize the owner or occupant of a land to enter adjoining land at any reasonable time for the purpose of making repairs or alterations to any building, fence or other structure on the land of the owner or occupant, but only to the extent necessary to carry out the repairs or alterations. All I need is access to my neighbor's property so that roofers can put a ladder up. That's all I require. So I'm appearing before members of council today to ask you to exercise that power. I take it Aurora doesn't have a bylaw. I've researched, I couldn't find one. The City of Toronto does. I suppose they have perhaps even tighter homes than we do here, or perhaps well, anyways, you see my dilemma. So I'm not certain what the manner in which the town can exercise the power that it has by statute, but to the extent that you do, I would ask that you do so. I have since learned my neighbor's name, though I've lived beside him for 7 years. It is David Moore, and his address is 51, not 53 Valemount Way, even though I'm 55. Apparently there's a house that skipped a number. So that's the information that I have for council. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to give any answer I may offer.
Thank you very much. Motion to receive the delegation, please, Mayor Dahl, Councilor Marcus. Are there any questions or comments of the delegate? Mayor Dahl.
Not the delegate, Madam Chair, thank you, but to Mr. Marr, could you comment, sir, on the legalities? Sounds like a rather bizarre situation.
Through Madam Chair. It is an odd situation, as the delegate has noted. Other municipalities do have access bylaws in place. As Section 132 sub 2 does imply that a bylaw would need to be passed, other municipalities in reviewing the situation do have bylaws that require for indemnification. The municipality is, if it passes a bylaw in this manner, would be allowing one homeowner to enter onto the property of another and thereby taking on certain amounts of risk, as I'm sure Mr. Romaine is aware. And on that basis, there is usually a fee, there's usually some indemnification written into the bylaw. We've done some research into it and we've seen what it is. The town of Aurora does not have a similar bylaw. So it would take a little bit of time to rectify the situation. It's unfortunate that the delegate's neighbor is not willing to afford him some understanding about his situation. But if council were to direct staff to proceed with this, it wouldn't happen next week, let's say. It would take some time for staff to investigate the matter, do some research into best practices, take a look at what the municipalities are doing, and then come forward with a report for council to consider, as well as a draft copy of the bylaw. So I dare say it would be several weeks before we get to a stage where I believe Mr. Romaine, the delegate, would be in a situation to apply for that bylaw, apply that bylaw to his neighbor and access the property.
Follow-up. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Marr. Perhaps 2 months? Would that...
If it's in the interest of the municipality having a bylaw that will help others if they find themselves in this unique situation, then that's good too. So I'm glad that there's some benefit that can come from this situation.
Is there, through you, Madam Chair, to the delegate, is there a short-term impending need, or is it more long-term in terms of making sure that portion of the roof matches with the rest?
I believe it's more long-term. I don't think any significant damage will be done between now and then. The downspout can stay down. There'll be some water going down the side, but if it's a 2-month time frame to do the job right, then I think that I'm happy to wait in that regard.
Thank you.
And I should say, whatever undertakings I need to make with respect to indemnity issues and that, I'm more than will. I understand them. I see what the conditions are under 132, and you will not have difficulty from me, agreeing to indemnify the municipality for any problems on my neighbor's land.
Thank you, Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's a question for perhaps bylaw or planning. I can't help but notice in my day in Toronto, they used to have common driveways between, and then they would split and do the garages. It's quite common. I would expect the same in a laneway, that they would share. But I notice in this one is twice the width than the other. So I don't know, Madam Chair, who's going to answer that. Do we allow that?
Ms. Aurora, Mr. Reno?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, in our new communities, the typical side yard on one side is a minimum of 4 feet, provided the other property has 2. So there's 6 feet in between side yards. So on one side, a homeowner will only have a 2-foot side yard. On the opposite side, it would have 4. So in between homes, there's 6, 4 and 2.
So in this case, this gentleman on the other side that has a gate of 4 feet, we might assume that he's got 2 on the other side and it exists.
Yeah, that should be the case.
And to the delegate, do you have 4 feet on the other side of your home?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. I often think that if we allow planning for situations like this to occur, it's up to us to remedy situations like this. We're going to crowd homes together, we're getting more assessment, we're getting more property tax. Part of our diligence is to make sure that the services and accessibility is there. So I hope that we can, and I'm encouraged that we do have a solution that we can put in place. Unfortunately, it's going to take a few weeks. The other question is, through you, Madam Chair, is how do we enforce that? I mean, in the old days, they'd arm themselves and protect their property. Do we bring in some strong arms or something, or serve, or how do we do this? Or is that another conversation?
Mr. Marr, do you want this one?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll take my best stab at it. This is one of the question that the councilors asked, I think is one of the things we look at investigating. Generally, by the wording of the statute in that particular section, it's incumbent on the person who's going on to the adjoining property to take the necessary steps in order to inform the resident, the neighbor, go on there as limited as possible, those types of things. There would be security or some type of fee imposed by the municipality to secure indemnification, so that way if the neighbor complained about damage caused to his property, that the town allowed that damage to occur by passing such a bylaw, that we were able to have some security to remedy that or go after the person who went onto the property. So all those things need to be investigated, I think, as part of our review of the bylaws.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Marr.
Members of council, if I may be so impudent as to make one more comment, picking up with where Councillor Abel had left off. In your review, if I could perhaps urge you to also look at the common use of laneways that are so narrow between homes and the appropriateness of allowing homeowners to erect these fences in these types of circumstances. All it will do is, if there are these access issues, is simply have now a revolving door system where one keeps going back to bylaws, and fences are allowed to pose as nuisances to neighbors to try and frustrate their quiet enjoyment of their property. So perhaps you could all look at the viability and appropriateness of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we would probably put this to new business, but we should move a motion forward to have bylaw look at this situation and come up with a new bylaw so that the work can proceed. So just discussing it right now won't make it happen. We have to actually ask staff to do that. Is it appropriate to do that at this time, or can we move it to new business?
Mr. Clerk, can new business be pulled forward to this time in the meeting?
Through Madam Chair to committee, it would not normally be done because if other matters arise throughout the course of the meeting, it would be difficult to go back to new business. I think the usual practice would be for us to notify the delegate that you intend to raise this issue under new business and possibly provide direction to staff. You can also inform the delegate that any recommendation coming forth from General Committee would still be subject to council approval next week.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm supportive of moving forward with the bylaw. We've identified a bit of a gap, and a solution's been presented, and I think that not just for this scenario, but in future, it's good to have. But perhaps through you to Mrs. Van Leeuwen, I'm sure that in your department you deal with, not specific to this issue, but other issues between property owners and so forth. Is there any role that the town can play in the interim to help in this situation, even if it's just so keeping everybody informed, or is there anything else that we can do?
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly we can reach out to the adjacent neighbor and have a discussion with them in terms of any authority. We do not have authority to require that he gives access to his neighbor.
And certainly I wasn't sort of looking at authority, but sometimes, conversations can go a long way, communication, and perhaps, there's some assistance that we can provide. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just through you to Clerk, could we just, I know Councillor Humphreys kind of touched on this, could we not just make a motion right now and just get this done with through the delegation, just that way he doesn't have to sit here until new business to see whether this goes through or not?
I believe the advice of the clerk was that it would be prudent to wait, but we could have an undertaking from the appropriate staff to get in touch with Mr. Romaine and let him know the result of this discussion, and then it also has to come back to council. I appreciate that you don't want the delegate to wait, but...
May I make two comments? First, on the issue of contacting I'm sorry for speaking out of term, just for council's benefit, on the issue of speaking to the landowner, my attempts at diplomacy have failed. When the fence went up, my wife hired a surveyor to try and figure out where our property line was, and my neighbor called the police on my wife. So, respectfully, thank you for the town may very well go and address him, but I submit that it may not be very effective. And if you wish for me to, if my business is to stay here, if it's to be discussed today, I'm happy to stay till the end of the meeting, if that pleases members of council.
Thank you. You may stay if you want, but you don't have to stay, and we will let you know what has happened. And in any case, it still has to pass council next week.
Then I will take my leave. Thank you again.
Thank you very much for coming forward. Okay, I think we have to vote on receive.
To receive the...
Thank you. A vote to receive the delegate, please. Councillor Marcus, Councillor Thompson, all those in favor? Thank you.
It's carried.
That is carried. Are there any presentations from the advisory committees? Seeing none, we'll go to separate discussion. The first item is number...
First, poll the audience to see if they're...
Oh, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who is here for a specific item tonight other than staff? Thank you. Then we'll start with item number 1. Thank you. Mayor Daw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move the motion as is.
Thank you. Second? Thank you, Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just think it's important to point out that when I came back from the public from the public information meeting that was hosted by Geranium at Williams about a month ago now, there was probably 500 some odd people in the audience, and it was very apparent that when we come to our first public planning meeting on the Highland Gate issue, that there would be insufficient room here, and we do not want to be in a position where we are not being able to host the people who wish to come. So I suggested to Mr. Ramuno in the clerk's office that we look around for another venue. And I know that, so the result of this is Mr. Ramuno bringing this report forward, and I know that he and the clerks have been looking into some alternate solutions, and hopefully we'll have something up fairly soon. But I just think I think it's prudent for us to be well ahead of this to ensure that we're in a position where we can handle the expected turnout. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Marcos?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Mayor Daw. I think a separate venue to hold all these people is warranted. I just, through you, I guess to Mr. Ramuno or to whoever can answer this, have we identified any specific locations as of yet?
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Madam Chair, as of today, based on, I've been looking at high schools, given they tend to have a facility large enough to host it, and based on the availability of high schools, subject to obviously approval of a permit from the school board, it appears that our only real option would be St. Maximilian Kolbe High School.
Thank you. Thank you. And just as a follow-up, I guess I hope that we give maybe a little bit more notice for this one, just due to the fact of a change of a venue, because most people would just assume that it's going to be in the council chambers and at town hall. So I would like to see that, maybe as soon as possible as we find out the venue, to put it out there and say this is where it's going to be, so that way everyone has that opportunity to know where it is.
Thank you. Good suggestion. Mr. Clerk, will we know that at the first public planning meeting?
Through Madam Chair, certainly as soon as, assuming Council adopts the recommendation before you and given the wording of it, as soon as I have secured the location and received the permit from the school board, I'll ensure that the town's website, its meeting calendar specifically notes the location, and undoubtedly Mr. Ramuno in sending the statutory notices would of course note the proper location, and we would ensure that there's as much notice as we could possibly give.
Thank you. Councilor Perry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking at the availability of information, I think a change of venue is good, but for me as well, if you go to our website and for people who are looking for more information, it sends you to a link that's been set up by the proponents of this. I think it would be wise for us to start our own frequently asked section on our website. It's not specifically speaking to this, but I think it speaks of having as useful of a public consultation process as possible, is to make sure that people are aware and have access to fully unbiased information before they go to the meeting. So I think it makes sense that we would set up a frequently asked questions section on our website. We've all received plenty of emails, and I think a lot of the same points get repeated over and over and over again. It might, benefit the residents to have us, not us specifically, but as a whole, staff and our planning department responding to some of the issues that continuously get brought up. And again, it doesn't necessarily fit into this discussion, but I think it was something that needs to be said tonight, and hopefully staff will do something about that.
Thank you, Councilor Perry. Councilor Humphreys?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, in terms of the same line of Councillor Perry, and it's an ample opportunity for us to communicate just the public planning process in general, because I believe this is going to be new to many residents. It's a really high visibility issue and concerning for many residents. So the more they understand how the process occurs, the better. I know that the residents also have their own Facebook page as well, so if there's any way that we can upload information there from a communications perspective. So the whole process, I see an engagement with planning and communications together, and using the communications department expertise to really push out that information so that when the public meetings happen, the residents have a really good understanding of what's happening, and they're going to come prepared and not let preconceived notions interfere with what's happening. So very important that that gets done. So if we can note that tonight, that would be great.
Thank you. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two points. One, I noticed when Glenway did theirs, they did it at the theater, Newmarket Theater. We don't have a theater, but the Colby High School is excellent. I mean, we've gone to the prayer breakfast there. That's an outstanding facility. And I think the easy way to communicate is through the Ratepayers Association. If we keep them in and we'll never, I notice this is a very connected residence. I mean, we never had a problem drawing a crowd. We put flyers down, we got 500 people. This is a different sort of situation. They're very engaged. So I have no concern with getting that communication out. Mind you, it's duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support the motion on the floor. I think we do need to explore a different venue, but I just wanted to pick up on Councillor Perry's comment, because I had the same comment right after the open house that we had at the end of March. At that time, I had asked that the website be updated because there was some confusion that came out of the open house with regards to the planning process, and having looked at it today, I still don't see any of that information updated, and so I'm just wondering, perhaps do we need to notice a motion to bring that forward, because that information was conveyed previously about enhancing the website, providing that information, and it's now a month and a half later. So perhaps through you to the CAO, I mean, what's the best way to proceed to make sure that it does happen?
Mr. CAO.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think you just done that, so noted, and we'll circle back tomorrow with the director and make sure that the information is updated per council's request.
Just because we all recognize, how important this issue is, that there is so much information flowing out. I think we have an inherent responsibility. We keep talking about communications, certainly the website is one of the avenues that we have, and we need to get this information out immediately. And so I look forward to seeing it on the website.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My interpretation of the 3 meetings is that they're considered as one meeting, but the second and third meetings are just addressing the size of the population of the group. So that said, can I assume then that between June and October, during the time that should Geranium receive some constructive feedback in June, do they have the opportunity to address it by the October meeting, or just for the sake of process and to receive feedback from everybody who may not be able to attend earlier meetings, no adjustments will be made to the original public plan during those the 3-4 month period? To Mr. Lumino, sorry.
Mr. Lumino?
Through you, Madam Chair. At our first public meeting at the end of June, it's our first opportunity, or this council's first opportunity, to engage in that process with our residents. The applicant will be there, and that is the opportunity for the applicant to also address concerns that they've heard from the residents, because they have been reaching out to the community, and as we know, they've had their open house mid-April, so that would be, that's their opportunity as well. Now, whether they're able to address, all those concerns in June, and that's why we've identified additional public meetings in the fall, September, October. So, I mean, our process really begins with our first public meeting at the end of June.
Mr. Kim? Or sorry, Councillor Kim?
Yes, so through Madam Chair, so what you're saying is that the builder does have the opportunity from the June meeting to the October meeting to make further adjustments if they feel is necessary?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I noticed at the meeting at Williams that Geranium seems to think that there's just going to be one public planning meeting in June. They did mention they wanted to move forward in September, and I think you were quite clear that that probably wouldn't happen. So is this something that can be communicated to Geranium as well?
That would presume what council is going to decide at the public planning meeting on the 24th, and I don't think that would be appropriate. On the other hand, I think that Geranium probably knows that one public planning meeting is not going to do it.
Right, I'm talking about when this comes to council and is passed.
Yep.
There's a way for us to communicate with Geranium. Thank you very much. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. The item 3 was pulled by Councillor Thompson, Economy and Housing in Aurora.
I'll put the recommendation on the floor.
Thank you. Second. Thanks, Councillor Maracus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may, through you to Mr. Ramuno, I just wanted to ask a couple questions with regards to the very last page of the report, page 9. The last paragraph, it says Aurora should work towards providing rental and affordable housing units in cooperation with the regional municipality of York, preferably in the vicinity of the Aurora Promenade. And so really it's just a general question through you to Mr. Ramuno is, what options or strategies are available to us that we're currently looking at to enable us to do this? Or, is there anything that we're exploring?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Madam Chair, there is, and we've had some preliminary discussions with regional staff, with our housing group. And the other thing we've done, and council's done in, adopting the promenade plan, is we've set the framework to allow for a range of different housing types along our promenade, along our Yonge Street intensification corridor. And, we are communicating with our development industry, they're seeking opportunities for a range of housing types, but we have started discussions with York Region staff about, them looking at opportunities for York Region rental housing opportunities in Aurora.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the way I read that last paragraph is that, there should be continual progress if we're working towards it. And so I was, not aware of anything that we're doing in terms of, next steps or making it a reality, so to speak. And so, that's why I was interested to know if there was any specific strategies, specific options that we could look at or explore or discuss around the table that sort of move us forward. I understand we're always having those conversations, and, last term, the Daniels Group and a few others brought forward some projects, but, what can we around this table in terms of different strategies or things that other municipalities do to help move that forward? Because I think, we should continue to work towards it, and so hopefully we'll see some other things outside of just general conversations.
Thank you. Mr. Goddard, would you like to comment on this?
Through you, Madam Chair, just for an update, actually, Mayor Dawn and I met with the Commissioner of Social and Health Services today about a specific project in Aurora, connecting a potential landowner with an opportunity at the region. So, and this is, I think, the second conversation that we've had along those lines. So, from a strategy perspective, we're trying to connect vacant pieces of property with their owners in York Region. So we're actually proactive in that regard.
Thank you, that's great to hear.
Councillor Kim, have you spoken yet? No? Councillor Kim, you go first. Okay, Councillor Perry.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This, I just wanted to clarify, is all drawn out of the amendments to the Places to Grow legislation, which manage the growth in York Region as well as the Golden Horseshoe. Could I get Mr. Romano to clarify that?
Through you, Madam Chair, specifically speaking to affordable housing, or just in general?
Did I jump ahead to the wrong report? Yes, I did. I will hold off on my questions then.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on Councillor Thompson's question regarding affordable housing, how do we get builders to build affordable housing? I mean, isn't it kind of an oxymoron? The whole point of them building is to profit from it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I can see how the center of town, there's room for improvement, but I can see how down the road, they could be very high-priced properties. So I would like to see affordable housing, but I'm just wondering, how is that possible to get builders on site? Through you to Mr. Romano.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Madam Chair. It's a difficult one because, as we all know, I mean, the price of housing continues to increase year over year. On page 5, I've provided in the report sort of the region's definition of affordability. And of course, in Aurora, we're already at that threshold where, affordability is for housing is close to $500,000. I mean, the one thing that we can do as a municipality is, provide just those opportunities for a range of housing types, being, apartment units, because they are more affordable. The cost of a unit is less than a ground-related type, and so just providing that mix of housing. But it is a challenge. We are seeing and we are hearing, more developers are looking at building just purpose-built rental housing projects. We already have a few in town that have been built over the last few years. One is under construction now, the property at 32 Wellington Street, the old Sommet Spa. So, we do have projects underway currently, and I've identified a few examples which I think do provide affordable housing to our future residents.
Yes, and through you, Madam Chair. This is a circular question, but it seems that, the stats show that Aurora has more than a proportionate share of retail and personal services, which are lower paying than institutional and other industries that would operate in the employment lands. So I'm just wondering, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do we provide these types of employment opportunities, hence we have a shortage, or should we have higher paying jobs so that they can afford some of the higher homes? I understand that in the past we had a position that was something akin to a rainmaker to bring businesses into Aurora. Is there, I'm not sure if it's an EDAC question or to Mr. Romano or Mr. Garvey, is it possible to have a rainmaker here in Aurora to just focus on bringing quality companies that bring the jobs into Aurora?
Well, that's a great question. Who wants that one? Mr. Garvey?
Through you, Madam Chair, anything's possible. Specifically to do industrial attraction, it's a body, so it would have to be budgeted for. And it's a move that we tended to drift away from because the return on that investment is fairly low when you do industrial attraction, and our focus has been retention and expansion. So that's been the focus of our economic strategy, is to work with companies to help them grow, to move and stay in town and provide those opportunities for them. So that's been our focus over the last 6 years while I've been here. So
Through Madam Chair, would it be, so essentially right now our strategy is a for sale sign in the employment lands on Leslie or at the 404, and just when companies inquire of us, but we don't really have a proactive strategy, is my understanding. Would it be appropriate then to put a motion down the road to potentially investigate a qualified person who might fit the bill and who might fit into a nice and tidy budget?
Thank you, Mr. Garvey.
Through Madam Chair, I should clarify that our focus is retention expansion. However, we still do marketing actively, and we partner with our N6 neighbors at different trade shows, and we try to spread that responsibility around and get people's attention in this part of the region. So we do some of that stuff. It's not a focus, it's not a dedication, but certainly council can bring forward that motion, and we can bring forward a report outlining the strategy and the pros and cons of industrial attraction and the cost and return on investment, so on.
Thank you, and I think that the region is, one of the places it's concentrating on affordable housing is through secondary suites. Ms. Sunderland, could you comment on where we are at this moment with secondary suites?
To you, Madam Chair, we have several hundred registered secondary suites. We continue to see activity and receive applications for secondary suites in the town of Aurora. I can check the registry. It'll just take me a minute to get the final number.
Thank you, and I believe we have a policy in place, or an informal policy in place with that, and perhaps reports back to council. Am I correct on that?
To you, Madam Chair, for clarification, do you mean a policy to report back on secondary suites?
On ways that we can improve it and what other municipalities are doing?
Well, our current zoning bylaw permits secondary suites, and I believe at the time we enacted the bylaw, planning did report back to council, and that was probably in 2010, 2011, and since then we've seen some activity with respect to building permit applications, and we've been doing inspections and registering secondary dwelling units.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, did you have another comment?
It was, I guess, more to Councillor Kim's initial comment in terms of affordable housing. And there's a number of elements that play into this. And the region is really the driver on this, not the local municipality. It's really not within, quite frankly, not within our resource capability to do that. So we have to work in conjunction with the region to help them find, as Mr. Garvey mentioned, he and I were up to see the commissioner earlier today on a piece of land, putting the developer in touch with community and social services and try and encourage them to come to some kind of agreement. But if you also look at an example, the Aurora United Church is very keen on rebuilding on their site and having a combination of community space, worship space, and affordable housing. So that's one element. There is actually a project that's underway right now out on Leslie Street, the York Christian Seniors Home, which is also affordable housing, which will eventually be 400 units of affordable housing. So there are things underway. We can always do better. We can always look at ways to be more creative in that, but it's very much a partnership between us, between the region, and developers. As an example, I believe Councillor Abel has mentioned this a couple of times, the Daniels Group, who've done a lot of work downtown in Regent Park? Or St. Jamestown? Regent Park, and the Daniels Corporation are the ones who put up, Daniels First Home, the very affordable first entry homes for young families. So it's an area that we can always keep on top of and certainly be aware of what's going on and encourage them in any way we can. One of the biggest drawbacks, though, quite frankly, is the price of land in Aurora. It's a huge detriment or a drag on creating that affordable housing. So there's a number of pieces that are in play there.
Councillor Thompson.
I also wanted just to bring out some information. There's some questions about, the attraction of employment and so forth, and what the town does as a strategy. Having been on EDAC last term, one of the things that was revisited last term was the development of an economic development action plan. Certainly within that action plan, it talks about, the core is the creation of quality employment opportunities that enrich the lives of the people. There are a number of objectives and strategies within that action plans that EDAC and Council were very much concerned with. It's an ongoing process. Certainly, whether it's leveraging developers, whether it's leveraging other regions, I would say that we are proactive, not reactive. I mean, we can debate the effectiveness of some of the things we can do. We can debate whether or not we want to do more, but I certainly don't want to give anyone the impression that we're not out there trying to attract quality employment for the residents, because certainly everybody would like to live, work closer to home. Anybody who's traveled down the Don Valley or the 404 knows that, it's quite a challenge, and so I think all of us are concerned with trying to find that high-quality employment and bringing it to Aurora.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas next, and then Councillor Abel.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize if this was brought up before. I had to leave briefly, but on page 5 of the report, it speaks to the region's definition of what affordable is. Has that been discussed yet? It hasn't? I guess it's more of a comment, unless there's someone who has, perhaps the mayor or someone on staff could answer. It states the ownership threshold and the upper limits of that ownership threshold in Aurora is value of $461,445, and that is the upper limits of what is considered affordable, quote-unquote. I think that sounds high to me, but perhaps if someone knows the rationale behind the region, the research or whatever. If not, then that's just more of a comment that I think that if the region's classifying a house that's worth $450,000 as affordable, I'm not sure how reliable that information will be. So,
thank you. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think everyone's had some good comments. Mine pertain to affordable housing. Often people cringe because they think it's subsidized. Our children are migrating away from Aurora. They can't afford to live here. They can't find a place to rent. We can't sustain service people to live in Aurora. They have to come from out of town. It reminds me of what's happening in Collingwood. They are now putting in a solution, but they created so many jobs at the fantastic ski area, but no one could afford to live there. So they couldn't provide the service. So I'm just saying it's so important that we address it. My thoughts are that we should create availability for land, encourage development as part of the strategy, and I think we've all talked to that. So those are sort of my thoughts.
Thank you. I have two comments. The first one is, I know quite a few people who live in subsidized housing, and I don't know if they think that people cringe at the thought of them living in that kind of housing. The second one is to Mr. Miner. Mr. Miner, there is something in the Planning Act that allows a municipality to require or to request, or maybe require, or permit builders to put more affordable units in their home in exchange for some community improvement, bonusing, etc. And if you could speak to that, and maybe you could give us a copy of that part of the Planning Act for next week.
To you, Madam Chair, I think you're referring to the Planning Act that requires Section 37 bonusing, and we've incorporated that policy within our official plan. We've had it in there for some time. That speaks to in exchange to providing additional density or height to a developer, we can request through the bonusing provision that they provide community benefits, and one example would be providing affordable housing, and that could be ensuring that a number of those units within a particular project qualify as affordable housing units, that they are sold and they meet that threshold. So we do have that provision in our official plan.
Thank you, and I I would like to request that we have that for council meeting, copy of the Planning Act and our OP section that speaks to that. Thank you. Are there any other speakers? All those in favor of receipt? Thank you, that carries. The next item is pulled by Councillor Thompson.
I'll put the recommendation on the floor.
Thank you, that starts item 4. Seconded, please, Councillor Rackes. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through to Ms. Van Leeuwen. Ms. Van Leeuwen, when I was reading through it, I did note that in the background it says that in 2006 the Building Code and Act provisions, sort of changed in terms of the time frame. But, and you gave a nice chart showing the number of new resident units per year, and you started at 2006. But just for my own sort of relation to it all, certainly the lands sort of east of Bayview and the 2B lands, most of them seem to get developed prior to 2006. So I was just asking perhaps, what were the challenges with regards to inspection, with dealing with all of those homes that came in, off of Conover and in that area? Did you see the same sort of challenges prior, or was it because the timeframes are a little bit looser, a little bit more different, that it was easier to manage within the town?
Through you, Madam Chair, I wasn't here prior to 2006, so I didn't experience those challenges. I can tell you that prior to 2006, the building code did not contain timeframes, and then they did not contain provisions around mandated inspections. So since 2006, the building code specifies when we must do inspections at various stages of construction. I do know the numbers prior to 2006, and there was a very busy year in 2004, but other than 2004, our average was 400 units per year, with the exception of 2004. 2008, we had an extremely busy year, both in residential and commercial. I was here at that time, and we did come forward and request that procedure number 13 around excess hours be waived, and we did pay our inspectors for a period of time, pay instead of time off in lieu. We've been managing the workload, but this year we are unable to meet timeframes, and our inspectors are on site for long hours during the day, and we're finding it very challenging to balance plan review and inspections, given our current staffing levels and the procedures.
Thank you, and certainly you've done a good job on the report of sort of explaining the challenges, and that, providing time in lieu just really compounds the issue down the road as more people come off. Through you, Madam Chair, to Ms. Van Leeuwen again, with regards to the financial implications, while you do clarify that, all direct and indirect costs really are covered through the building permit fees and so forth, have we been able to sort of identify even roughly what we think that the implication of this policy will be? How much will it cost?
Through you, Madam Chair, for clarification, are you speaking with respect to waiving procedure number 13 and paying instead of lieu time? It's hard to put a figure around that. I would suggest that perhaps it would be in the neighborhood of $50,000 to $75,000 for a year.
Just personally, I think it's good to have a sense of the scope or the time invested in what we're talking about, so that's why I like knowing the number, even though, yes, I know that it's not essentially an operational impact because it is covered through the permit fees. I think it's important for us to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on this? Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is also for Ms. Van Leeuwen. It's very brief. It's just I suppose it's the fourth clause in the recommendations. It speaks to that certain programs will be suspended until workload allows. If this goes through, when do you think that the workload will allow those programs to become back online? If you could speak briefly to that.
Through you, Madam Chair, I would expect that, we're going to monitor our workload. We're going to work with the builders. We don't know exactly when they're all going to come in. I would expect that within a year, perhaps by next summer, and this really is a summer program. We have a lot of uptake in the summer because it's geared towards homeowners and small improvement projects. We don't see a lot of those over the winter. So by next spring, we're hoping that we can resurrect the program and meet those 3-day turnaround times. As mentioned in the report, we are committed to assisting homeowners, so we will continue with extended hours over the summer months periodically, and we will advertise those, keep our doors open until 8 o'clock so that residents can come in, they can work with staff, they can ask questions, they can submit a building permit application. If it's a good quality application and your drawings are sufficient, we'll issue permits over the counter during those extended hours in the summertime.
Thank you. Follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anybody else for the first time? Councilor Marcus, my apology.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen. I understand that, with the 2C lands being developed, I'm just wondering, after they're fully developed, what will become of this position? Is this a temporary type of position that once the lands are developed, then our numbers start to drop? Or is this a position that will be here forever?
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Madam Chair, the request is for a full-time position. We expect that we will be extremely busy for 4+ years, when we're built out, including our ICI, and we'll have infill development projects, and at that time, we will deal with any staff resourcing challenges that we have through attrition.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up, through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen, do you have an average number that you expected to stay at over those years?
Through you, Madam Chair, we know that there are about 2,900 residential units in 2C, so we have issued about 600 of those units. Going forward, we know that there's 2,300 more to be built in 2C alone, and then all the other projects and industrial commercial development as well, employment lands.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so, sorry, Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize not for asking this previously. It's actually about administration procedure number 13, so perhaps I can direct it to Mr. Garvey. Mr. Garvey, when I looked at it, it notes here that the last time it was revised was 2005. And when I read through it, I noticed that it's actually fairly out of date. In 2013, we revised the salary grade positions within the town of Aurora and reduced it from 24 grade levels to 18, I think it was. And so this policy here actually speaks to, in terms of hours and who's eligible and who's not eligible, and talks about those at grade 18 and above. And so when I compared it with the older version and the newer version, there's actually people now that didn't qualify previously to 2013 that now qualify. And so I think that we need to have this policy revised to reflect those changes sooner rather than later.
Mr. Garvey.
I agree.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? That carries.
Everyone has to vote.
Okay, everyone has to vote if it's going to be. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you, that carries. Thank you. Before we go on to item 5, which is Councillor Thompson's, I have been seriously remiss. I have not welcomed Mr. Tree to the table. Welcome, Jim Tree. Okay, Councillor Thompson.
I'll move the recommendation.
Second, please, Councillor Kim. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'm not sure if it would be best maybe perhaps to invite Mr. Aurora to the table since he's much more familiar with the strategic plan, having been involved with it.
Thank you. Mr. Ulo, good to see you.
And I appreciate this coming forward. I know it was, I spoke to it last time with regards to the need to see it and see some of the status of some of the initiatives. And I just had a couple quick questions just for clarification, so perhaps through you to Mr. Arullo. One of the ones really talks about the whole broadband strategy. And for those that are following along, it's page 4 of the strat plan report card. It talks about a complete review of available broadband service levels for residents and businesses, and that it's been completed. But yet, I can't find it on our website or anywhere that if I was a resident and I wanted to know what's available, how do they get the information? Because on some of these actions, we say that they're completed and we've identified the outcome or the measurement of success, but the information isn't necessarily readily available for those in the town. So specific to that one, where would a resident find that information about broadband levels?
Through you, Madam Chair. In terms of broadband itself, the initiative was taken up as part of the York Region Economic Development Plan, and therefore the region has taken the lead on that action, and research was conducted through the region in partnership with the 9 local municipalities. With respect to infrastructure in the ground, the service providers that own the infrastructure are fairly protective of that information and generally don't make it publicly available, and so there was information provided to the group conducting the analysis for the region that helped lead to conclusions, but the information itself in terms of infrastructure in the ground was never provided nor made public, and I don't anticipate that it will be made public. In terms of service levels that are being provided to residents themselves, a lot of that is provider-specific. Different providers provide different levels of service, and those levels of service fluctuate depending on both infrastructure and market, and you see differences between sort of what the major providers are offering to their various clientele. I guess the best place to determine what the levels of service are would be through the service providers themselves. They would provide anyone with the most accurate information at that time. But there were generalities or general sort of ranges provided in the regional report that looked at general levels of service in different parts of different municipalities that are available through that regional report.
And thank you. And the reason why I brought it up is that I remember the discussion around it, and part of it centers around the fact that, there are a lot of home-based businesses within Aurora. There's lots of people who, are able to work from home on occasion as well, and the level of service varies within the town. And so, certainly from a home-based perspective, it's good information to have to be aware of, where those capabilities are, and so that was some of the thought at that time, really, of being able to identify those areas or, what we can do to help, improve the service in some areas so that everybody has access to, better internet. And so I think that, while I understand that some of the companies may want to protect some of those details, I think that, if we're going to promote businesses and support them, especially home-based businesses, there's a role for us to play and be able to get that information out to them so that they can, better service their clients and better improve upon their operations. So, perhaps, Chair of EDAC can take that back, because I know there are some members of EDAC who certainly are very much in favor of talking more about broadband, where is it going, and how we can support home-based businesses. So that was just a comment. My other comment really was in terms of on page 8, it says a new hotel site was approved on Donahillock Drive. I'm not sure if it's a new hotel site. I know that there's been one and it's kind of changed hands and all that stuff. So just for clarification, have we actually approved a new hotel site, or is this the same one that's just sort of changed hands? Through you to Mr. Arullo.
Through you, Madam Chair, it is the same site that has changed hands, and it has changed hands various times as noted by Councillor Thompson.
So, to me, the establishment of a new hotel convention center in Aurora is not complete. I think it's still very much a priority in my mind and in other minds around the table. A number of people spoke about it on the election trail, and I think that that needs to stay as a priority and something that we continue to actively work towards. And so, I wouldn't agree that it's complete.
A very good comment, thank you. Councillor Humphreys?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for putting this together. I really appreciate the report card and the status and the areas, and I hope that we can receive them. I know we didn't want them more than, I believe, from a strategic perspective, once a year, but if we can continue to move forward, and I know that the idea was to see where we're at and see if we are going to come together with as a council, review where we're at and move forward, or are we going to go plunge into a brand new strategic plan for the next 5 years. So I'm not sure if there's any thought around that on next steps for this, or, we can leave it. There's still some work to do, and again, great information. Just back to broadband, it's interesting, the two questions I had were similar to Councillor Thompson's. Just an interesting fact, are we working anywhere with our service providers within the town of Aurora, and not just from a regional perspective? Do we know for sure? Because we just have, in our area, where I live in the northwest area of town, there was no high speed and it had to go with cable company, and now there's full Bell 5, and everything it's fantastic, and you can finally have great service at home. Are we doing that? Is that an initiative that's happening? Just curious, because it's great to have it.
Mr. Ulo?
Through Madam Chair, I'd love to take credit for the improvements in your neighborhood, but quite honestly, the service providers are constantly improving their service levels. There's an obvious business case for them to provide services where it makes sense, and given the densities in this town, it often does make sense, and we're seeing constant investments in infrastructure from all the various providers across the spectrum.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just so you, Madam Chair, are we going to take a look at this and decide to come together to do another view of this in terms of getting together with a smaller group? Is that the vision? And then making a decision to go to external consulting if we feel appropriate? I think that's where this started, I believe. Do you, Madam Chair, if someone can answer that?
Thank you. Mr. Ulo, Mr. Ulo.
Through you, Madam Chair, direction from Council previously with respect to the strategic plan update was to bring this report forward and then bring back the previous report for discussion at a subsequent meeting. And so our intent, I believe, through the CAO is to bring back that report for discussion and have that discussion with Council and determine what the best way is to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you for attending at the table, Mr. Ulo. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. So sorry. I have no idea what you just said to me. Mayor Daw.
It's my turn next. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Ulo, and Councillor Thompson referred a bit to the broadband strategy and how we keep people informed. So on page 76 of our agenda, on the first item, it talks measure of success. It says broadband study completed in partnership with York Region leading the broadband strategy with Aurora involvement. Would it be possible to put a link in the document to that strategy so that if anybody was interested in following up on what the particular reports were, what the studies were, that there would be a fairly easy way to get to that? Madam Clerk, through you to Mr. Ulo.
Mr. Ulo.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that is possible.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other speakers, so vote to receive this for information. All those in favor? All those opposed? That passes, Mr. Clerk. Number 6 belongs to Council Maracas. Excellent Matters, Aurora.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move as is.
Second. Thanks, Councilor Peary.
just wondering, through you to, I guess to Mr. Garby, I was just curious, how much time do we spend, staff time, do we spend working on this and trying to achieve this goal?
Through Madam Chair, I think staff spend probably about an hour or two a month on this specific task. So they would meet maybe every month for an hour and a half, and then this becomes the work plan for the national course. So the whole purpose of this is really to drive work plans for continuous improvement. So it's not, it's all work related. So the time we spend in meetings is probably about an hour and a half a month, maybe I would say.
Thank you. And I mean, I've visited the Canada Excellence website and kind of gone through it a little bit and, checked it out and seen what they're all about, and as far as time that's required and put into it. And I mean, we achieved the bronze level, and I mean, that's great. And, it says that they typically take about 6 to 12 months to implement that bronze level. But for me, I think it's more of a, I look at it, and they say that it's a self-assessment process. So we go through that here, our employees, our staff, you do the work and you go through that, and then we pay a fee, and they come in and they interview our senior managers and level for about 90 minutes, and then they decide whether to give us this certification. I'm just wondering, is this not something that we should be doing, and is it possible that we could, do we actually need them to come in and tell us that we've achieved this level? Could we not just do this and just do it on our own?
Mr. Garvey?
Through Madam Chair, this is similar to your ISO certification, so you do need an external auditor to confirm what, the tendency is to perhaps think of yourself better than you are, and so it's important to have that external validation. So at every step, including the bronze, there are external auditors that come in and quiz, and as you progress through the levels, the amount that's required, the penetration, we call it, the penetration of knowledge and awareness of things that are going on broadens. So the bronze level, it was senior level, and a representation of about 40% of our staff or 30% of our staff. I forget exactly what the number is. But as each level progresses, the expectations are greater, and more staff are involved. So they'll go out and talk to someone on the front lines and say, are you aware of the vision, mission, and values of the corporation, and can you tell me what they are? Are your leaders engaged in what you do? Do they know what you're doing? And it's an external validation, and it becomes a critique of your organization. And also by engaging more and more people, there's the sense of ownership in the organization, and that is the true key of continuous improvement, is when every individual owns the process, every individual is responsible for continuous improvement. And by structuring this program in the way it is, it forces and drives that responsibility throughout the whole organization more than if we just did it on our own. It compels us all to ratchet up a little bit, and I think we've seen the positive results as listed in the report. So that gives you a bit of a picture of where we're thinking and where we're going.
Thank you. And then through Madam Chair, it is a $10,000 fee that's paid to recertify, I guess, after I think it's every 2 years or whatnot. I was just wondering, and it was mentioned that it's from the budget, so I was just wondering where in the budget that line item was, if I could get an answer, maybe through you to Mr. Elliott. I didn't necessarily see that during the budget process. I was just wondering where that line item was actually.
Through Madam Chair, that's in the memberships line.
So if you saw the line item that says memberships, that's where we're included. So all the professional, that's our AMO fee or our FCM fee. One of them is paid by the region, I can't remember which, but this fee and our professional association fees as well, so. Okay, thank you. Just a couple of comments. Personally, I don't know really what the value is to the residents and to the taxpayers of this program. I think it's, while we were going through the budget, I think it's something that I would have liked to have identified and that we could have possibly saved $10,000. I mean, I went through their website, and across Canada, there's only 5 municipalities and 1 region across all of Canada that actually do this. I don't see the worth of it. I don't see the need of it. I don't see the benefit to the residents and the taxpayers. I would like to have seen the line item a little bit sooner. That way I could have made a decision on that during the budget, but that's my comments. Thank you.
Mayor Dahl?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do support it. I do think it brings value. It brings an impartial view to how well we're running our organization, and I think that's a benefit to any organization and therefore the shareholders of that organization. So I do support it. I do think it brings value. It may not be right in your face kind of value as in I can cut an item, but I think it brings long-term value, and I believe that that's a little more difficult perhaps to speak to, but I think it's equally important as anything else we do.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do find value in these types of programs, and however, the content of the programs is critical. I think these programs are effective to those who want to better themselves, because it's all about attitude and behaviors. Having worked in the workforce for many years, I've witnessed many of these programs and been involved in these myself, and the biggest obstacle to the success of these types of programs is essentially the behavior and attitudes of the participants. If they don't want to change, if they don't want or believe in continuous improvement, it is really a waste of money. And I think the best programs, and I've been to one, is where they actually teach you to identify those who do not have that attitude or behavior, who want to promote themselves, in terms of better themselves. Because if you have a certain attitude or behavior, it's just not going to change because you go through a certain course. I think so. I'm all for courses like this, but it's effective only if the participant is willing to change and willing to go for continuous improvement. So again, I think a program, maybe we can discuss with this organization, how can we identify those who do not want to participate, and because I find that if there's 10% of the people who don't want to participate, then it really ruins this concept of continuous behavior or continuous improvement for the whole organization. Thank you.
Mr. Garber, would you like to comment on that? And also Councillor Marax's point about that there seems to be very few participants at this point in time. Is this a new initiative?
Through Madam Chair, as far as the municipal world goes, some of us, I like to think, are more progressive than others, and I think this is a progressive step and engages staff, and I think that it's an important one and adds value. I think the expectation of our residents is that we'll run a well-organized machine, and when they call, they'll know who to call. And when they apply for something, they'll get a response. And this process identifies, or this program identifies our key processes, and this is what we're working on right now, where our gaps are, or where we need to improve, breaks it all down and rebuilds it.
so we have an efficient process. So I think that is the value to our residents. That's our expectation of me as the chief administrator. That's the expectation of our administration. We hear it all the time, and this is one way of systematically looking at our organization and driving change in our organization. And to Councillor Kim's point, I think he's spot on. I think that the benefit of this is that it demands everyone's participation, and we find out actually very quickly the areas where things don't progress because everyone has a responsibility to participate. So I think we actually, the program is set up for something like that. It is set up to have people succeed and have success. It also reveals the people that would rather not progress with the organization. So, and we can deal with that.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I agree, it's great, and it's a great job to do this and to have these initiatives. I just don't feel that we need to go to an outside source to purchase a certification. I think we can save that money and do this all in-house, and personally, I believe that these are programs that we should already have set up, and we should be running already and engaging our staff and having them involved, and the need to go outside and basically pay a $10,000 fee so someone can say, hey, you're a bronze level. I mean, to me, I don't see the benefit of paying that $10,000 to the residents. If we're going to do it anyways, let's just do it. Why pay the $10,000? And I think that's more of my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you for bringing it forward. I know there was questions during the budget about the program and, those sort of the value, and wasn't clear, nor was, what is that exactly entailed in upon it. So, for me, continuous improvement projects, plans like this, I mean, there is value for sure, but part of it really is being able to develop indicators so that you can see the effectiveness, see, how is it, impacting the organization as you move through this process. And so, through you, Mr. Garvey, I mean, how can we, develop or identify KPIs that might speak to some of the things that through this program, is improving the productivity or the effectiveness of the organization, to show that there is value in doing these types of programs.
Mr. Garvey?
Through you, Madam Chair. Part of the work plan and part of the way it's built is that you evaluate where you are, so like a baseline, and the next level is developing an action plan for continuous improvement. And along the way, you actually have to measure how both have you changed and are you sustaining change. So there are actually measures on the key processes that have to be developed. And so that's where we are right now, is to develop those related to this program, our key performance indicators. And we have a key performance indicator program, but this would be in addition to that as well. So there's work to be done, but it's a requirement of the program is to develop those measures.
So if I understand you correctly, although not available today, eventually we'll be able to see some of those performance metrics and be able to identify the change that's happened through this program.
That's absolutely right, yeah.
And so, I know some of the comments around the table is, whether or not we actually need a program like this to institute that change, whether it can be done in-house. But either way, I mean, from a continuous improvement perspective, I think it's important for us to continue to show, how we are improving that performance and be able to relate it out to the residents so that it adds, confidence within the administration. So I look forward to seeing those numbers.
Thank you, and I think what you said about how we were able to report that out to the residents is important as well. Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Thompson just spoke to what I was going to bring up, which was that reporting out. And I guess the only comment I would make about, whether or not it's 5 municipalities or whatever across Canada, is that Aurora can be seen as a leader with respect to how we operate, and I think that's important. And also, with respect, I don't think it's fairly appropriate to say that just anyone hands out a bronze certificate, because it indicates in the report that the awards are patroned by His Excellency the Governor General. So not just anyone handing out a bronze certificate. It is, as it's stated in the report, akin to the Order of Canada in terms of its prestige. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garvin?
Through you, Madam Chair, specific to Councillor Thompson's point and highlighting Councillor Tom's point too, on page 11 of 16 of the report, they're looking at the criteria and where we are. This is just on one section. It's on strategy and planning. I don't know if it's numbered, but it's 11 of 16 of my report. The criteria C talks about baseline indicators to measure performance against goals that have been established and developing an excellent scorecard, performance indicators on all those factors. So that is a requirement, and that's what we're working on specifically to Councillor Thompson's point.
Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor of receipt of the report?
He wants us to third time.
Apparently, as the mover, you're allowed to speak for a third time. Briefly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had one question. I'm not sure if anyone can answer it for me, but has anyone that has paid the fee, have they been denied a certification? Have they been told that they don't qualify after they've paid? Or has everyone that has paid been basically certified?
Mr. Garber, do you know the answer to that?
That would undermine the credibility of the program. And I actually know of organizations that have been, what you do is you get a scorecard, and if you fall short, you don't get the stamp of you lose, but you say, you've got some improvement to do. They turn them back and say, make these improvements and we'll recertify. So it is definitely happens. I certainly know of organizations that have experienced that in my experience as well.
Thank you. So, I was premature. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Mayor John, item 9, notice policy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move it as is.
Thank you, seconder. Councillor Kim, thank you.
Actually, Madam Chair, my thought was to defer this until we deal with the entire communications process and the notice that Councillor Thompson brought forward last week or the week before, to put it all together. There was some comments at that time in terms of procedural notice. Mr. Moore has obviously been working on this for a long time. It was just coincident that it came up at this point. So my suggestion would be to defer that and bring it back all at the same time.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the deferral? Councillor Humphreys.
Or it should be sooner than that, but you can speak to the deferral.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I would just ask the Mayor to clarify specifically when do you mean deferring it until a committee has dealt with the communications plan on tonight, or until perhaps a later time once committee has or council has made some determinations around the overall communication policy and plan?
Well, if we refer to the report under communications, it's been suggested that we take it to a workshop. So I would suggest that we take this as part of that material to the workshop. So that would be, I perhaps didn't word it as well as I could, but that would be my thought.
So then, through you, Madam Chair, if I may, I would suggest that perhaps just procedurally right now, then we table this matter, because there's no guarantee that the communications plan, of course, with the recommendation to go to a workshop. If it's committee's recommendation to council to put the communications plan to a workshop, then it would be appropriate to take this item from the table and could refer to the same workshop, and then we could deal with that all at council.
Seconded by Councillor Perry. Ms. Councillor Thompson.
Speaking to the deferral, I guess my only concern is that, obviously, Mr. Marr feels that this policy is ready to be enacted by council. The discussion around the communication is the workshop, it's the engagement, and then we put a timeline on the end of 2015. So, through you to Mr. Marr, if it's bundled with everything else and it doesn't come back until the fall or towards the end of 2015, what impact, if any, will it have?
Point of order, this is a motion to table right now, not a motion to defer, and non-debatable.
My comments already come out, so I misheard, because I kind of heard, so...
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Mr. Hake, that was the comment? Thank you. All those in favor of a deferral? Table. Excuse me. All those in favor of a tabling of this motion? All those opposed? Councillor Thompson? Thank you. That carries.
So you have another member.
Apparently I'm the flag policy, may I ask, or I can just give up the chair to Councillor Abel, if he would accept it?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Could I have someone bring a motion to the table, please? Councillor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Perry. Did you want to speak to this?
Thank you.
Councillor Gardner, go ahead, please.
Thank you. On page 8 of the report, first of all, I think it's a good report. I'm glad to see it. On page 8 of the report, under community flag raisings, it's number 7. So I guess this would be a question to you, Mr. Marr. 7.1 says a request to fly a community flag at a town hall facility will be submitted to the clerk in writing 4 weeks prior. And then it says the clerk is delegated the authority to approve and deny any request to fly a community flag. And then it goes on in 7.3 to say, in the case where a proclamation has been issued by the mayor and council, then that automatically means that the flag can be flown. Is that the correct English? So I just wanted to mention, when a group applies to have their flag put in place, will they also be notified that if there is a proclamation, if council declares a proclamation in place, that that's an automatic?
Mr. Marr.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe Mr. Hike has an answer to that question.
Thank you, Mr. Marr. I just think it's an important link for a group to know.
We'll ask the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, a group will not necessarily be automatically notified for the simple reason that most groups would not have an approved flag of sorts, and so it would be almost redundant to do so. However, those groups that do have a recognized flag as part of their group usually request them jointly, so they'll certainly be aware, and I have no doubt that as time passes, that knowledge will expand.
Thank you, so there's no need to worry about that. Thank you, appreciate that. All those in favor? Sorry. I'm not chairing.
Are there any other comments or questions from members of council? Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't recall where I read it in the report. It just said that the town would indicate to Central York Fire Services that
to be aware of the flag policy. And I just wanted to know, just in general, since we did update or reintroduce the official flag of the town, if similar notices would be sent to the region of York as well. I'm not sure if they have a flag that flies, a town flag that flies, and which one they'll be flying and all that kind of stuff. More comment, I suppose.
That's a good question.
Like, for instance, the Wellington Street flagpoles, are those town flags or are those regional flags?
They're not regional.
Theirs? Okay.
They'll be our town.
Then perhaps it's redundant. I just thought I'd mention it because Central York Fire was mentioned, but the region wasn't, so perhaps it's more of a comment than a question.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no questions, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Councillor Gardner, do you have you pulled a few more?
Thank you, Councillor Elo.
I'll pass the chair back to you then.
Thank you very much. The next one is number 11, audio recordings of closed session. Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move as is.
Is there a second? Thank you, Councillor Peary.
I would like to make an amendment to this, but I'll wait to hear comments around the table before I do. I'd like to make an amendment to go with the alternative to have direct staff to commence audio recordings of closed session meetings. I think that it's something that we should do, considering the Ombudsman has recommended this, and I think it's a good practice, and I think it backs us up in case of future or possible litigation, that there's an audio recording that could be put into evidence. So I think it's something good, and I'll just hear the comments before I put that amendment on the floor.
Thank you. Are there any other Councillor Camp?
Just to Councilor Marax's point, through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Marr, the biggest reason for the recommendation here to not adopt it because of the absence of legislative protection, is that pretty well with certainty, or is there a way that we can not disclose during the discovery process during a legal proceeding?
Mr. Marr, sorry.
Through you, Madam Chair, that is one of the major reasons that staff have an issue with moving forward with audio and video recording closed session meetings. The Ombudsman is in favor of doing so, but I think what he fails to notice or recommend is that the legislation in American jurisdictions where that's a requirement has those legislative protections to prevent that. So right now, there is nothing stopping in the middle of potential litigation an opposing side for asking for those recordings, and then we would have to defend that, and may not be able to necessarily prevent the entire recording from being disclosed, as I've pointed out in the report. One of the concerns that we do have is that without that protection, it does put the town at risk, and the province did have an opportunity when it enacted Bill 8 to move forward with in that direction, to require municipalities to do so and to provide the proper legal protections, and they didn't do any of those things. And so it left it as an ombudsman's request, but it didn't actually force municipalities to do so. So I take it from that the province obviously was requiring us to do so, because there are some logistical issues and legislative issues as well that need to be overcome in order to do that.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For those that are new to the table this term, I brought forward that motion last term, and even before last term, the term before, it was introduced as well to council, and so it's something that's come before us on a few times. We've had some conversation. There are some municipalities doing it, namely Tiny Township and Lambton Shores of doing it. So through you to Mr. Marr. Mr. Marr, obviously they've been doing it for a few years now. Are you aware of any issues that have come about as a result of them audio recording those closed sessions?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, I'm not, but I am also aware that no other municipality has followed them, and certainly no large municipality such as the size of Aurora has bothered moving in that direction.
And through to the clerk, I mean, what information, as the clerk, do you keep in terms of our closed sessions? And is that something that could be subject to the same sort of legal challenges that Mr. Marr is discussing, be it audio versus written?
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. In terms of closed session meetings, I keep summary notes of the discussion points of different committee members and also the comments of staff. I keep a summary note. That's primarily to, should we ever have a closed meeting investigation, demonstrate that we have completely and fully complied with the Municipal Act requirements and that we're not straying from the reason why we went in closed session, which we were authorized to do so in the first place. Those notes are maintained securely with the closed session file. Should those matters ever come forward, I would have to defer to Mr. Marr, but I imagine if there was a matter of litigation that arose in that respect, certainly my notes would be potentially subject to discovery, but I would leave that to Mr. Marr to answer.
Yes, Mr. Marr.
Through you, Madam Chair, the notes that the clerk keeps on this is in compliance with the Municipal Act and the requirements of closed session meetings, but it doesn't reach the standard of an actual audio or video recording. It doesn't record minute by minute or second by second conversations and comments of that nature, nor is there a requirement to do so. To expose the municipality to that level of scrutiny would require potential disclosure of that information in any litigation.
But just to be clear, I mean, those notes would be subject to the same sort of challenge or availability as the audio recording.
Through Madam Chair, that's correct, but their materiality is much less in any litigation compared to an actual audio or video recording.
Agreed, certainly wouldn't have the detail but I guess you could argue that maybe having more information, having, a verbatim account of what happened may be more helpful than having the notes. And at the same time, you could argue or debate that, it may put us at risk. I mean, part of this came out of the challenges that were faced prior to last term, late 2010, and the lawsuit that ensued as a result of it, and there wasn't that information, and it did create quite an issue. And so part of it is making sure that something like that could never happen again, that the town could not be subject to that same sort of challenge or risk because the information was not good enough to substantiate some of the stuff that was happening. And so, I'm still supportive of it.
Councillor Abel?
Thank you. I always enjoy when our solicitor gives us his legal opinion, and we can acknowledge it, or we can dispute it. The matter that Councillor Thompson was talking about through Madam Chair was something that occurred in closed session, but through you, we took measures to make sure that steps would be in place so that this couldn't happen again. If I could ask for you, I think I recall a couple of steps at least.
Mr. Marr?
Through Madam Chair, that's correct. Council has adopted a litigation claims policy that puts restrictions and standards upon how council, for example, can communicate with external legal counsel. And so that's just one example of a measure. There's also a remuneration bylaw in case any councillor or staff person is subject to a lawsuit. So those types of things, we've actually put rules and regulations around conduct.
Thank you very much. So we did learn, and we did put in a method and steps so that it wouldn't occur again, and Councillor Thompson spoke to that. I don't think audio recordings are going to do that. I always appreciate when our solicitor says he doesn't want to put the town at risk, and I think the taxpayers are very appreciative of advice from a solicitor in that remark. So I would be more in favor of listening to my town solicitor and the risks that put the taxpayers at, than listening and trying to appease the ombudsman, who is making recommendations without support from legislation, as our town solicitor just mentioned. I think the message I would send to the ombudsman is, we would be in favor if you could protect us from risk. However, in the absence of that, we'll adopt the same procedures of recording by the clerk that we have for the last 125 years. We have a very, I believe, guidelines that we adopt, and our clerk and our solicitor advise us of when to go in closed session and what is appropriate to minimize inquiries. I can't recall one inquiry on a closed session. I may be wrong. So if everything's accordingly good and the recommendation is not to, and only 2 municipalities have done it and they're minor, and if you read some of the ombudsman's reports, in every case that he's been involved, he always recommends recording. I think it makes his job easier, because otherwise his role would to go to each counselor that was in the closed session and staff, and he asks them questions. He looks at the notes, and he can make his recommendations, because that's all he can do. I don't believe the ombudsman can levy fines. So almost every report is a recommendation. I'm comfortable with what we're doing in closed session. I think we've got we have as it's always been adopted, if there is some inquiries, we have the summary notes that are there. And those summary notes take a bit of the color and they're objective, like in the minutes. The problem with recordings is, as soon as you have a recording, as the solicitor has told us, then through a court, those recordings can be put into someone else's hands and used for whatever they want. So you might say something in closed session and then be subject to litigation of the town because of a remark you made. My point is, if it ain't broke, why go and put ourselves at risk? I mean, I know it sounds good, it sounds open and transparent, but we are open and transparent. It's all there and has been in place for a number of years. So I'm in favor of receiving the information. We had a good discussion last term and the term before, and as Councillor Marakis pointed out when we were talking about the excellence, if only 5 municipalities in one region are doing it, why would we necessarily be adopting it? And in this case, only 2 municipalities out of 444 are doing it. They're small, they have limited resources, and the ombudsman is a free service. So, those are sort of my thoughts. I would just stay with the recommendation of our town solicitor.
Thank you. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also believe that any organization managing risk is of highest priority, especially in this volatile environment. However, there's also a risk of taking too much risk. The other side of risk is the rewards. So through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Marr, it seems clear you've looked at the risk portion, but has anyone on staff looked at the rewards of the Ombudsman's recommendation passing?
Through you, Madam Chair, we have, and the biggest reward we see is that it makes the Ombudsman's life easier. It doesn't make the town's life easier. It allows him to go in and review the audio and video recording, so that way he doesn't have to talk to each of you individually or talk to the staff who are present. And then he can go about his business. But it doesn't necessarily make the town's life any easier. And so on that basis, we're not here to do the Ombudsman's job for him, I believe. And so we can't generally, as staff, recommend it.
Thank you. I'm in favor of this, and I wish that we'd had recordings at the end of 2010. Would have saved us a lot of time, trouble, and money. So, Councillor Marcus.
So I guess at this point, I'll put an amendment on the floor that that council directs staff to commence audio recordings, and if I could get a seconder.
Councillor Thompson is seconding.
So I'll just put that on the floor.
Thank you. Unless anyone wants to say anything else, Mayor Dawes? Councillor Perry. Okay, hold on.
I will follow the good advice of our solicitor and not be voting in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
I should be voting against this amendment because I'm following the solicitor's advice. For me, I am fully in favor of audio video recording closed sessions if the right elements are put in place first, and at this point in time, they're not. And I'd love to be voting in favor of this, but for me, until the right, whether you want to call them precautions or procedures are put in place to protect the municipality's interests, I can't vote for it at this point in time, but in future, if those things come into place, I'm happy to support this, but until that point in time, I just can't do it.
Councillor Humphreys, we'll just go around.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Difficult one. I've been thinking about this. Probably one of the items on our agenda that has really preoccupied a lot of my time and thought in terms of the experience that we had last term and the efforts around that, and then understanding the risk that the solicitor, who I respect very, very much, and has done his due diligence as well in terms of making statements protecting our town. So for me, it's a very difficult decision because of that experience. And if I didn't have that experience, I know this would be, I just would say absolutely follow solicitor. I'm wondering if at all possible, if we move forward with this, because I think it's the right thing at this point that I believe is the right thing to do in terms of our experience here in our town. Is there anything that we can do in terms of what Councillor Perry was mentioning to protect what is sent out, say an audit is to be performed, and topics of discussion are maybe individually recorded separately so that the tape is specific to the audit? I don't know if I'm getting too much detail, probably I am, we're nowhere near this, but can we have further information tonight, or are we just going to pass it through? So my question is, can we, if this does move forward, can we protect the town in terms of providing what is required should not happen and not additional discussion outside? There's 2 or 3 topics we talked about in closed session. Can we just release the one topic? Very basic.
Mr. Maher?
Through Madam Chair, I'm going to try my best to get to that. I think it would be very difficult in the absence of some legislative framework for us to do so, because once you put this in place and you start to build a box around it, then you arguably undermine entirely what you're trying to do. So in the absence of a positive legislative framework that the province gives us, and they did have the opportunity to do so in Bill 8, and they did not, it makes it very difficult for me to say, I can eliminate that risk totally, or as much as possible. I can't assure council that.
Thank you. Councillor Tom, Councillor Kim, and then Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In light of the comments we just heard, I also will take the expert legal advice of our solicitor and be voting against the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Marr. Is there any, is legislation pending right now, or has anyone initiated on at the provincial level, or it's just quiet?
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe we have not heard anything at all about it. I believe Bill 8 was the end result of the expansion of the Ombudsman's powers, and they did not deal with it at that point, so I have not heard anything else about moving further on this matter at the province.
Okay. Through you, Madam Chair, is it appropriate to ask a question of another councillor at this time, or?
It's been done before.
Okay. Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Marcus or Councillor Marcus or anyone else. So I'm just trying to understand the reason behind allowing recordings, so I can accurately assess how I vote. You obviously have a reason behind your perspective, so is it okay to hear that out so I can make an accurate judgment, please?
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, do you want to say something?
I can, but I think maybe, due to the fact that, I have knowledge of the previous, to a certain point, what happened before in regards to the lawsuit and whatnot, but I think there might be a few here that might be better suited to speak to that and why, audio recordings would be a necessity and why they would help out in certain instances, and so I think maybe,
Well, I could speak to that, and maybe Councillor Thompson wants to. The notes that are taken for closed session are very circumspect. You haven't probably had a chance yet to have a look at the notes, and it all depends who's taking the notes. I haven't looked at Mr. House's notes, but I bet they're pretty good, pretty clear. That isn't always the case. And they really only tell a very little part of the story. And as I said in my opinion, had we had closed session recordings, and I think this has been on the agenda since 2007, 2008, I think it's a long time in coming, but I think it would protect the town. It would certainly be a beneficial financial move, and I think all around just would save a lot of stress, potentially. I know there's the other side of it, but I believe that this is important for accessibility, transparency, and to get the real story on something. So do you want to add anything to that? Councillor Thompson, you're up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First let me say that I have the utmost respect for our town solicitor. I always consider what he has to say, and I always weigh that in my own decision-making. I think our solicitor always looks after the town's interests first, and I commend him for that all the time. And so my desire or my decision to move towards audio recordings has nothing to do with not trusting the advice. I did weigh it, but I also look at other things as well. And so, from a public perception, you look at some of the arguments around the table and saying that we don't want people to know what we're saying behind closed session, right? It kind of implies that, we're not conducting ourselves appropriately, or we're saying things we shouldn't, that there's somehow something different happens on behind there than happens here. And that's not a good perception for the public. And we certainly absolutely conduct ourselves professionally, and we speak to the issues and stuff. You look at some of the issues that have come out in other municipalities, and certainly the Ombudsman puts out his report and identifies all these different things that happens in other municipalities in closed sessions, and that sort of creates that kind of perception that something different happens, and so that kind of addresses it. But absolutely, had it been in place before, it would have saved time, energy, and money, as Councillor Gardner did speak about. But, you must have policies and procedures, absolutely. In the prior report, and it is listed at the end of this report, it says go back to 2013 and look at the prior report, because it did say, if we were to go forward, you got to come up with retention policies, you got to have policies around it. And yes, ideally, it would be fantastic if the provincial government took the lead and brought in legislation to put parameters around it or to lead, but as Mr. Marr identified, they haven't. But I think that, and this just continues to speak to the evolution of accounting and transparency within municipal governments and within all governments. And maybe today this council decides not to, but I think that audio recording of closed sessions is not an if, but it's a when. It'll come. And so, I'm still in favor of moving in that direction.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Humphries?
Madam Madam Chair, my apologies. The one thing that caught my attention throughout the report is when the ombudsman actually quotes, I will continue to monitor municipal record-keeping practices closely.
Could you say where you're reading?
On my apologies, page 2 of item 11 report, page 177 of our full agenda. I will continue to monitor the various last line of the municipal record-keeping practices closely, and if they do not improve, I will consider recommending that the Ontario government make legislative changes to require it. He's looked at this for the past 4 years, and I don't think from his perspective or their perspective, this is going to change. To Councillor Thompson's last comment, it looks like this will be made and presented to the Ontario government for legislative action. I think it's coming, and that's about it.
Councillor Tom, I think? Yes, you were next, and then Councillor Peary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I suppose with respect to the comments just made by Councillor Thompson and Councillor Humphreys, I think that all of us around the table are certainly going to tack towards more openness and transparency. However, as the clerk or the town solicitor has pointed out, the legislative framework for that to take place, at least from a mitigation of risk to the town, it does not exist. And so his advice in weighing that option to us was that we not move forward based on the significant risk that could be posed to the municipality. Certainly, if the provincial government had enacted legislation that would alleviate that concern, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But that is the case. And to enact a policy, as Councillor Thompson said, because he mentioned that there could be a perception by the public of non-transparency and non-openness, that to me is not really a way forward if you're talking about making sound policy. I mean, a perception of the public can be combated with information. This is why we did not move in this direction. It also speaks to the communications policies we were just talking about at the last council. If we can communicate to the residents the reason why we're not moving forward, based on the fact that the advice of the town solicitor, the lack of legislative protections for the town, at least at this time, I think that should be sufficient for the residents to understand that we're not trying to shroud secrecy in our closed session meetings. As Councillor Edwards pointed out, and as the report speaks to, our closed session meetings and the minutes that have been taken up to this point have been sufficient and very open and transparent. In fact, in the conclusions written by the town solicitor on the last page of the report, he says that conditions may apply in other municipalities investigated by the Ombudsman, but they do not exist in Aurora, which already has in place closed meeting procedures that are as open and transparent as possible. We've also heard that they currently comply with the Municipal Act. So, again, those would be my comments, and I would be against the amendment.
Councillor Peary.
I would only state that I agree with Councillor Thompson wholeheartedly. I do think it's inevitable at some point or another that this comes forward. I just hope that when it does, that the legislative framework exists to protect the municipality at that point in time.
Okay, Councillor Abel first.
Thank you. The town's, our solicitor has advised us to wait until there's legislation to protect us. And I think the 442 other municipalities, their council are listening to their town solicitor and saying, wait until there's legislation put in there. We will continue to keep accurate municipal record-keeping practices, which have done us no harm to this date. So I don't know why we'd want to, unless there's something I don't understand, trailblaze ahead and put ourselves at risk. Through you, Madam Chair, if there was, say, a court case, whether it be civil or whatever, and a court ordered that he wanted to know what went on in that closed session, and ordered us to surrender the tapes, then would that be possibility, one of the risks that we're looking at, through you, Madam Chair?
Mr. Marr.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes it is, and we also have to be looking at MFIPA as well, which might allow anybody, not necessarily a court, to try and obtain a copy of that tape. which we would then may have to turn around and excise certain portions of it that we could disclose and others that we couldn't. It puts staff as well in a very difficult position of trying to determine what should remain confidential and what shouldn't, and a court order, of course, would require us to disclose that information.
I'll just wait till the conversation's over before I ask my next question. So with Amphibia, that would consume some resources of the town.
Through Madam Chair, yes, it would.
And it would also consume resources if we had to fight off some litigation. Through Madam Chair, would also how people voted, who were talking, and their stance on certain instances be made public at that stage? Who was the person driving a certain motion and who all was in favor of it? Would that not all be public information under Amphibia?
Through Madam Chair, it may, but it would depend on the nature of the conversation that was occurring. Again, staff would have to try and determine what that was, and that puts, again, the head in a very unenviable position.
So here we are, thank you, Mr. Mark. So here we are trying to make life easy for the ombudsman, but we're going to put our town at risk, and not only risk for litigation, but risk at more money being spent on our solicitor. We may have to hire more people to handle all these things because these recordings are available. And what was said and who voted and how you took a position would be made public, which that's why we go into closed session, is to protect ourselves from that. And that legislation, if it was in place, would protect us from that, and that's what the United States do. Through you, Madam Chair.
Through Madam Chair, yes, that's correct.
So my conclusion is why would we go and be frontiersmen and do this, put the town at risk, when no one else is doing it, and the province isn't supporting you, and we have practices that are working perfectly well for us, just like they do in 442 other municipalities. I'm not in favor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering if I'm the only one who sees irony in the fact we're talking about being open and transparent about closed session discussions. Could be me, just perhaps the way I think. And, we're talking about value to the taxpayer. This is being driven by an ombudsman. If I recall the newspaper stories, he was in the paper for spending over $200,000 just to get to and from his job, not to do his job. So I find that a touch ironic as well. So I think it's easier for him because he spends too much time tweeting, but that just might be my opinion. No, I believe that Mr. Marr has captured what we need to do, and Councillor Thompson said we may indeed have legislation at some time. I would really appreciate it, actually, if the provincial government would focus on legislation like joint and several liability that's putting municipalities at huge risk and other things, as opposed to items that are important but not nearly as important to our taxpayers as things like that. So again, I will not be supporting it.
Councilor Marcus, I'll give you the last comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify something that the mayor stated. It's actually not the ombudsman that was the driver of this. It's actually my wife, Alison Collins-Marcus. While she was councillor, she was the driver of this back I believe, in 2009. So
It's 8, maybe, yeah. Okay. I think it's time to call the vote. On the amendment. Is everybody clear on the amendment? Do you want it? Pretty clear on the TV. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? Pretty close. Thanks. It does not carry. Back to the main motion. That the report be received for information. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I've got the next 3 items.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. And could I have someone move the motion on item 12?
Thank you.
I need a seconder.
Sorry.
Councillor Perry, go ahead. Councillor
Thank you. I'd like to move this as is. I think it's actually... actually wonderful that Mr. Tree happens to be in the council chamber tonight, as he is the author of the Parks Maintenance Service Level Standards. I thought it was a great report, and that's all I have to say.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Mr. Clerk. Number 13. Could I have someone put a motion on? Councillor Gardner?
I can't move this if somebody else wouldn't mind.
Councillor Perry will move it. Who will second? Councillor Marakis. Councillor Gardner, you pulled it, so I'll allow you to start.
Thank you. This is about removing 7 trees, property on Ridge Road. Our policy is 4 trees. These are mature trees, all of them. I'm not in favor of giving this landowner the ability to remove 7 in total mature trees on his property.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there, through yourself, there's an existing structure on this property, right?
Mr. Tree?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. We're going to demolish that structure.
Thank you, Mr. Tree. And again, Mr. Chair, is there an idea, and again, if this is in the report, I apologize, as to the total number of mature trees that are on the property, with the exception of the 7 in question?
Mr. Tree?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, there's an inventory of all the trees on the property, and the 7 trees. It's not actually included in your information package. The arborist report has come in as part of the information that we require in order to approve or recommend a tree removal. So that information is included in the arborist report.
Mr. Tree, do you have a number?
In terms of the number of trees that are being removed? No, or the total number of trees in the property?
Thank you, the total number in the property.
I don't have it with me, but yes, we do have the number. I can provide that. I don't want to guess. There's a number of mature trees that are outside of this area that are preserved and protected and are not influenced by this development.
Thank you. Councillor Tom?
I would just, thank you, Mr. Tree, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to see perhaps a more detailed report when this comes back to council. Thank you.
Councillor Humphries, is that your hand? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, and I may have missed it as well, so my apologies to Mr. Chair, to Mr. Tree. Just understand that the trees are large and mature. Any background on the trees themselves? I mean, I think we have a policy right now that allows 4 of the trees. We're actually asking for additional 3 to be removed, so within that 12-month period, through which is our building structure, a home that it looks like, they're approved for. So we need to do something in order to get this home built. But I'd just like to understand, do we know what those 3 trees are, that additional trees, or in general, are they ones that were planted? Are they quick-growing trees? Are they really special trees? We have those types of categories.
Mr. Tree?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just an overview of what is going on here is this property was subject to a minor variance. The Committee of Adjustment has approved the minor variance subject to some conditions. The owners of this property have submitted a proposal. They meet the requirements of the Oak Ridge Marine legislation. We have a bylaw that is, I don't want to say it's a technical issue, but it is an issue that it needs to be complied with. All of the conditions of approval can be met. There's a plan to build a large home on the property, and it's in compliance, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Planner, Mr. Ramuno, sorry, that they are permitted to build a building of this size in this amount of lot coverage. These trees happen to be in the way of that development. The trees that they want to remove are mature, they're natural trees, they were on the property, they're oaks and maples. Ridge Road, at the end of Ridge Road, is a wooded area, and it's lots of naturally old trees. And 7 of these trees are in the way and compromised by this building. I can provide you with more information about surrounding trees. However, these surrounding trees are not in any way impacted by this development. 7 are. And they are large trees, over 20 millimeters in diameter, centimeters, pardon me, in diameter at breast height, and therefore are protected by our tree protection bylaw. that's kind of an overview of where we are here.
Thank you, Mr. Tree.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, appreciate it. And, from Mr. Tree's perspective, it looks like he approves of this to occur based on the overall site plan. And I take, my apologies. Yes, Mr. Chair, I believe Mr. Tree would like to add some comments.
Mr. Tree, please do.
Apologize. Just I wanted to add that in the conditions and in our requirements under the tree permit process, we require compensation for these trees to be removed. So part of the background work that we have in addition to this permit is requirements for the arborist and the landowner to provide compensation based on the value of those trees. There's formulas for valuing these trees to assign value, financial value, as well as compensation in the way of replanting. So all of these things go into the simplified development agreement that the owner will have to enter through our planning department. Again, the tree, I don't like to say again, it's a technicality, but it is a process that we often go through to deal with these minor variance applications.
Thank you, Mr. Tree. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? I have a few, Mr. Tree, if you don't mind. The money that is assessed on this permit, where does that go?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is it will go to general revenue stream on the park side of the budget.
Thank you. And I am familiar with another application years ago in the Oak Ridge Moraine where there was a lot of trees. There was an existing house and a lot of trees were removed to build a bigger house, but they complied with the Planning Act in the Oak Ridges Moraine, and I think, Mr. Ramuno, you can tell me, I think it's 25% is allowed in the Oak Ridges Moraine for something along those lines?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have the bylaw in front of me, but alterations are permitted, and the amount of lot coverage would be based on the zoning in place on the specific property. But alterations, new construction, or alterations to existing dwellings are permitted, subject to a variance.
Thank you. And Mr. Ramuno, if we didn't have the Aurora tree bylaw that arbitrarily took 4 trees as a maximum, would this be going straight through because it wouldn't have the, under the variance application at the Committee of Adjustment, I understand, they asked that this be addressed and waived because probably at that time someone said you can only take 4 down. And so they said, well, we'll allow this, but just make sure it clears council bylaw that we're taking 7. Have I captured that right?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. A condition of the variance was that they comply with the bylaw, and, they need to remove the 7, which is more than the 4 outlined in the bylaw.
Thank you. And I'm totally in favor of doing this. It's recommended. I can appreciate what the resident is doing. He's in the middle of a forest. He's allowed to clear 25% of the land under the Planning Act, the Oak Ridges Act, and he's not nearly coming towards it. He applied for that variance to make a bigger house. It complies all the way around. The only stickler is the Aurora bylaw, which in my mind applies to more of a settled area in our heavier, denser residential areas where 4 trees would make an impact, not in some of the Oak Ridges estate homes. And I would remind council that I think almost every estate home cleared a number of mature trees. However, at the time, we didn't have a bylaw that would have had to been through. So those are sort of my thoughts. I'm in favor of it. Any other comments? Seeing none, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I might ask to Mr. Mino, I wasn't following. It's according to the Oak Ridges Marine Act, according to the Planning Act, according to what? Are we, a homeowner is allowed to clear 25% of the property?
Mr. Arroyo?
To you, Madam Chair, within the settlement area, on lots of record, this is a lot of record, I'm sorry, let me step back. This is in the settlement area. The zoning on this property is our historic rural zoning with the Oak Ridges Moraine suffix in response to our Oak Ridges Moraine update to our bylaw, which states that alterations or new construction in the area is permitted. Within our bylaw, it's subject to a variance application, and that process was put in place so that we could, in these situations, evaluate the proposal and its impact and work with the applicant to minimize the alteration to the area. But the Oak Ridges Marine Plan does permit development in these areas. Our official plan also permits development in these areas. Our zoning bylaw simply requires the variance application in order for us to evaluate the process, minimize the amount of disruption to the area. I don't have the bylaw in front of me, I apologize. I'll have to confirm whether our bylaw actually states a 25% coverage or whether it's even more than that.
Thank you, and I do seem to remember the 25% figure, so maybe you could provide that for next week. Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Mr. Clerk, one more.
Thank you. The last one is Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee minutes.
All right, I'll ask for a motion to be put on. A seconder?
I can motion that.
Councillor Perry, seconder. Councillor Gardner, would you like to start?
Thank you, and I may have to ask this next week, Mr. Chair. Perhaps Mr. Tree can answer it. This was an update to the committee, their first meeting, I believe. And one of the updates was Mr. Downey's description of, or mentioned, a facility utilization study. Or maybe Mr. Garby, I don't remember hearing about that, knowing about that. So do you have any information on that, Mr.? Sorry.
Mr. Tree, we're looking at page 2 of the report.
Thank you.
Under delegations, it says 4B, where Mr. Downey was speaking. And if you could take a quick look at paragraph B, and I'll allow you to address it, and then Councillor Thompson's going to volunteer his thoughts on it too, or vice versa, it doesn't matter.
Thank you.
Mr. Tree?
Yeah, I stand to be corrected. My recollection in discussions with Mr. Downey is that there are some vacant buildings and there's a study going on to determine use. As I say, I stand to be corrected, but I think it's along that line. The Armories Building is one of them. I think Victoria Hall, a number of other facilities that were library, in Limbo, the library, correct, the old senior center, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
If I can just add, certainly that was what Mr. Downey was discussing at the PRAC meeting. It's really, current buildings that the town has that are, vacant or underutilized, and coming forward with thoughts for council on how best to utilize them, the Armory, Victoria Hall, and so forth. And so it's something that's in process.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gardner?
That's fine, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Humphreys?
Mr. Chair, just one comment. I want to thank Town Clerk for the minutes of these meetings. They're fantastic. I can get the gist of what's happened, and they're clear, and I don't have to search for the information. So thank you very much for that change.
Good recording, Mr. Clerk, of the minutes and what goes on. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. I'll pass the chair back to Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I missed the joke. Okay. Number 16 belongs to Councillor Thompson.
I'll put the recommendation on the floor, and then based on discussion.
Seconded by Councillor Raffis. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. really the intent when I put forward the notice of motion is that we can have some of that conversation around the table now. You'll have had a chance to see the corporate plan from 2011, look at the policy. I know for myself, when I look at the policy, it seems to me to be outdated. It talks about, editorial committees and website committees, and to be honest with you, I don't know if they're in use or not. Certainly it needs to be refreshed, but most of all, really, it's about revisiting that, as we continually say over and over about having, a really effective communication plan, right? Developing, measurable, clearly defined goals and metrics to evaluate it. It's interesting, when you look in the 2011 plan, it talks about, having a little bit more of a progressive approach, get away from just talking about volume, how many times you did this and how many times you did that, and really look at, are we being effective? Are we really getting that message out to the residents and engaging them and pulling them in? That's where we want to go. Out of that 2011 plan, there was talk about developing those goals and some sort of way to really measure the effectiveness of what we're doing, and is it reaching the people that we need to reach? And so that's the intent of really going back and looking at our policies and our plans to try and redevelop them. I did find a little bit interesting in this memorandum. At the bottom of the purpose, it says this memo will also propose options for council's consideration, but I didn't necessarily see options in there. What I did see was a proposal for a council workshop, and the purpose of this is really, why aren't we including the residents in this workshop? Why aren't we reaching out to the residents and incorporating them into this process? The question here is about, how are we communicating to you? Are we doing the right things? How else can we communicate to you, the resident? But yet, there's no recommendation at this point to include them in it, and they should be. Absolutely, they should be part of this process, right? At the end of the day, we work for residents. And if the message isn't getting to them, they should be part of this process. And so, I'm not in favor of a council workshop. You want to have it as a public workshop. You want to expand it a little bit and bring them in and ask those questions. I'm all for that if that's how everybody on council wants to proceed. But some of these things, I'd like us to start moving forward on now and developing those. I have a number of issues in this report, but I think I'll take it offline and have some conversations around it, because it identifies certain things that, I may not agree with or I don't think are accurate, but, there's all kinds of things we need to incorporate into our communications policy. I know we have a social media policy, but I can't find it. I don't know what it is. It's never been presented to me. It should be part of it. It's part of that whole ongoing thing. There's lots of things. I know that Mayor Dodd did talk about the notification policy, different things, but mostly it's about how are we engaging the residents, and is it being effective in developing those plans and making sure that, we're doing it right. Going back to that accountability framework, are we doing the right things? I don't think we are. Or at least it's hard to know if we're doing the right things, because we don't have a system in place to properly evaluate the effectiveness. I work in a retail industry. I can tell you, we send out millions of flyers. And if we were just looking at volume, I can tell you we send out millions of flyers and you think that would be effective. But no, there's other things you look at to gauge whether or not there's any impact as a result of sending all these things out. And that's some of the things we need to look at and try and incorporate, so that really, we can get a better sense of, are the dollars being well spent? Is there something that we're doing that we shouldn't be doing? Is there something we're not doing that we need to be doing? But I did have a specific question from Mr. Garvey. Mr. Garvey, in the report, it talks about the 2015 budget process and that attachment 9 was presented to us. But yet, nowhere in the budget information that I have, nor could I find it on the website, could I find attachment 9 in the communications plan for 2015 and all of the different items. And so, have I missed something? Am I wrong? Was it presented to us and I can't find it, or?
Mr. Garvey.
Through Mr. Mayor, it was part of my presentation, so...
I did look at the presentation and I didn't see the same sort of detail that was provided in that.
I conveyed the information, but this was not presented to council. That's accurate.
Great. And so,
while I'm all for the workshop, I think there are other things we can start moving forward and working on. One of them that I'd really like to see us move on now is the citizen budget. I think the citizen budget has potential. When it was presented, the results were presented to us in January. There seemed to be a general consensus around the table that at its base level, that we like some of the stuff, but we wanted to see it be more interactive, have some more questions, do different things. We talked about it in the budget process. The city of Markham actually won an award because of what they've done with their version of citizen budget. And so when I look in the report, the one challenge I have is that it's not supposed to be rolled out till September. Well, in talking with our CFO, Mr. Elliott, we're starting the budget process in September. We're going to do the capital in September, and operational is going to be rolled out at the beginning of November. To me, that's too late to roll out the citizen budget. We should be finalizing it and rolling it now, so the feedback of the residents, the engagement is there, so that it also provides some feedback and information for staff and their discussions as they are preparing the budget and moving it forward. I think it's almost too late because staff will have presented a budget based on their needs. And to me, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Garvey, but I think there's valuable information in that process for you and your team as you're preparing that budget just as much as it is for us. And so, I think that should be brought forward as well. And those are some of the things we can. I look forward to hearing everybody else's comments, but I think that if there's a workshop, there definitely needs to be resident engagement. We need to bring them into this process and have a conversation. There are, we're very fortunate, there are a wealth of people that have, different perspectives, expertise on this. Why not engage them? Why not, be inclusive?
Thank you. Councillor Peary?
I believe Councillor Humphreys after.
Oh, okay. Councillor Humphreys.
I'll be quick, Madam Chair. I think Councillor Thompson hit the nail on the head. I don't know how much value would be us going around the table right now. I do think we definitely need to get some resident engagement into this. I think a workshop is still valuable to make sure that we give staff a clear vision of what our expectations are. So I think, a dual-pronged approach on this makes a lot of sense. Based on the hour, I think we're probably all on the same page that I don't want to stop anything else we're doing. If we're going to be moving forward on things, I want to keep moving forward on them, like the citizen budget. But really, I think let's just get going on having a workshop after we've consulted the public as much as possible to make sure that their expectations and their views are being incorporated in a plan and a vision forward.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to try not to be repetitive. I think Councillor Thompson and Councillor Peary hit the areas. I do want to make a comment that, in 2010, when we were elected, and then 2011, the Communications Department did do a solid job, 11, 12, in trying to get us on track. I think we had numerous communication problems, and we got up to speed quickly with social media, trying to get engagement with the residents. We came forward to get us to that point. The last few years, I think what we're doing is we're doing a good job of being consistent and applying the techniques that we have, maybe an opportunity to take it that next step further. And it's not just communications in terms of content, it's how do we outreach and get the community so engaged, like we need to engage the community. And we talk about this in all areas of our organization here. So I'm really excited about, Councillor Peary's comment about let's move forward with the workshop. Absolutely citizen engagement. And maybe we can get some of these, young computer app technique kids, are just wizards, and who knows what they could bring to the table in terms of how we can almost get out to these residents, and they can't help but get information from us. and be the first thing on their phone, Town of Aurora, click, and, there's so many ways I think we can do, and I'm sure there's lots more going on that I might be aware, so I'm excited about this proposal. I'm excited about getting engaged, kind of revitalizing it again, working with the staff we have to get out there and do a lot more work around this. So looking forward to it. Would love council to provide more further information, direction to staff, so staff isn't trying to figure out exactly what we're looking for. It's really just more engagement, more communication, and have town residents engaged as much as possible. And I'm sure the communicators probably have their own ideas of who else to engage. So really, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to make this move forward, and let's start with doing the workshop and everything else in parallel. Sorry, my voice is driving me crazy.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Abel?
Communication, engagement.
There you go. Love it.
That's right. That's a good one. Anybody else want to?
We're good.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, are you going to add to this?
If it's council's wish to have a workshop, opening to the public, but I also think that we have an excellent opportunity to engage the residents at the street festival. It's around the corner. It's 30 days away. All right. We typically have a booth, and I'll assume we do again. All right. You have a lot of people going up and down the street, and why not make it a focal point within that booth about how do you want to be, engaged, or information, and people can stop by while they're going on the street festival, and that information can be brought back to us as well. That's another way to take advantage of the residents, the audience that's there. And so, in terms of providing direction, I'll make the motion that the council move forward with the establishment of a workshop. But I want to be clear. I just don't want it to be us around a table. Right? The need to have engagement. I mean, here's a perfect opportunity for our youth coordinator. Work with the youth committee and the AFLC and the youth that are there in the loft, and try and incorporate as much as you can. Bring it back to us about how best to reach all of our residents. So I guess that council establish a workshop for the development of the communication. Sir?
Schedule a workshop.
Yeah, sure. The council schedule a workshop. A public workshop. But also that council, that staff be directed to, engage the residents at the street festival with regards to how they'd like to be communicated to, or communication ideas.
Just say it's part of the process.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Kemp is at the table. I would like to hear his ideas on this. If you would, Mr. Kemp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think they're all excellent ideas. We do use the street festival as an opportunity to engage people. We take down all of their questions, all of their suggestions. We compile them, we follow up with them directly. It's a very valuable tool to have. We do that at the home show annually. It's also a good opportunity. I had the opportunity, and I know you've got a lot of paper in front of you in this report, but I did reach out to York University Schulich School of Business in December. I had the opportunity to speak with Dr. A.J. Searcy, who's been with the marketing department for 20 years, and we formed a partnership in January wherein we brought 5 senior business administration students in to do surveying over March break. So they had the opportunity to engage a number of residents in a very timely fashion, as a lot of families were visiting the Aurora Family Leisure Complex, the SARC, and the library, which is where they camped out, and they had iPads and they were doing surveys there. I think it's an excellent opportunity to see how we're doing. I've just gotten the information from the students. The preliminary information suggests that we're reaching out on the channels they want us to reach out onto, but they also had some good ideas, and I've already started to implement those. So I'm very encouraged by what I'm hearing around council. I think I've had every member of council in my office. My door is open. I'd like to hear what you have to say. For the new members of council, you have a standing invitation to come and speak to me about some ideas you have. I'm happy to take things offline, as well as have a council workshop. Communications is one of those amorphous things where you can't necessarily get a full handle on the scope of what our department does. I'd be open to the opportunity to share that with you a little more fully and receive any information you have, any suggestions you have.
Thank you. Mr. Kemp, will you be bringing a report to council on what you found out from the senior business students?
Yes.
What they found out from the public?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes. I'll be reporting that out to council. We were originally scheduled for the June timeframe to do that. I don't foresee any reason why we couldn't do that unless we wanted to schedule this workshop in a similar timeframe.
Thank you.
If that works for council.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Through to Mr. Kemp, just a quick question about it. Was that the resident survey that originally the proposal was to go out and hire a consultant for $30,000, and then at the direction of council, we said, no, it would be better to do it internally and tasked, I guess, staff to figure out a way to do it rather than spend the money?
Mr. Kemp?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. That was born out of that initiative for the benefit of members of council who were new around the table. Last year, an item got brought forward for council's consideration to do a community survey. Council ultimately decided to go in a different direction and see what we could do independently. Instead of hiring a third-party consultancy firm, that we could do a community-based survey, potentially over telephone or doing on-site surveying, which is what we did. So it was born of that. For the benefit of all members of council, the original proposal was brought forward by Mr. Aurora with input from me, so it had some of the more strategic elements in the strategic plan. My survey is based on marketing and communications.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp. Any follow-up? Nope. Any more questions?
Voting on the amendment.
Voting on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Voting...
Main motion as amended.
Voting on the main motion as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries.
Madam Chair, we have to, may I?
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if I might suggest at this time it would be appropriate to take from the table, the item number 9, and the motion as suggested could be referred to the same workshop.
Would someone like to make that motion? Councillor Perry, Mayor Dawn?
At this point...
To take from the table.
At this point, Madam Chair, I would move the staff recommendation as it sits. Having looked through this again quickly, what the discussion was on, I think we can probably proceed with this independently from the communications workshop.
Mr. Mayor, I don't mean to be rude, but we have to vote on the actual taking from the table. All those in favor? Thank you. And the motion that goes forward?
I'll move the staff recommendation as is.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Humphreys.
And
It's already on the, we already have the movement second.
Okay, well, Councillor Perry then. Thank you. Okay. Now, I interrupted you. Could you?
Well, no, I was just going to say that it would appear that based on perhaps the time it will take to get a communications workshop and some of the benefits that will drive out of that, it would make sense to move this forward at this point.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Do we know the timing on this?
This is right away.
Right away.
This one's right away.
This one's right away. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? We have an extra member at the table. That carries. Okay.
New business.
Yes, new business. We do have the issue of Mr. Romaines. Would anybody like to tackle that? Councillor Humphreys?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to move a motion forward for bylaw services to investigate and develop a bylaw that will allow access to a neighboring, can I say this? Staff, my apologies. I would like to ask staff to investigate and develop a bylaw that will allow access to neighboring properties to perform repairs through restriction. So it's according to the municipal acts 132, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, Municipal Act 132.
Yes, okay, the clerk is going to try.
If I might suggest, I believe the amendment you're looking for is that staff be directed to report back to council on opportunities to implement a temporary right of access to adjacent landowners' property in accordance with Section 132 of the Municipal Act.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Seconded by Councillor Marcus. Any discussion on this? Mayor Dodd?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just do it as quickly as possible, that's all.
Yes, thank you. And may I ask who is going to get, sorry, Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we would also like to address that anyone building gates and fences should be advised of that bylaw in the future. Do they permit that, or can they just construct it? To you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Van Loon?
Through you, Madam Chair, if it's a pool enclosure fence, they're required to get a permit. If it's not, there is no requirement for a permit.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask who is going to be getting back to Mr. Romaine? Is there any kind of protocol for this, Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. Through Madam Chair, assuming that this recommendation is adopted at council next week, my team and myself personally will undertake to advise Mr. Romaine of council's adoption of such a recommendation.
Subject to council approval. Thank you. Any other new business at the table?
So we need to vote on that.
Oh, we need to vote on that. My apology. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. New business, Councillor Humphreys.
Just a reminder, this Thursday at Upper Canada Mall, Portraits of Giving. There's going to be a wonderful reception there, hosted by photographer Karen Merrick, and it starts at 7 o'clock, again, Portraits of Giving reception at Upper Canada Mall. And can I also add, Bocce, Special Olympics Bocce was this past weekend from Thursday to Sunday. My team rocked like you wouldn't believe, although they didn't win. No thanks to the coach, but they did a great job. It was an incredible experience. There was 3 teams from Italy, one from Malta, one from Vancouver, and all over Ontario. So it was really a great turn. It was a wonderful experience, and I encourage anyone starting beginning of June, on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, the teams will be practicing at the Senior Center outdoor bocce. They're just amazing. They're really good at what they do, and we'll rock the event next year for sure.
Congratulations. Councillor Thompson.
I just wanted to mention that even though the Run for South Lake has passed, that you can still contribute to the foundation through the Run for South Lake website, and you can also still contribute to Team Aurora, which we're still in the municipal challenge. We're still currently sitting second behind EG, but Mayor Dawes taking it personal.
He didn't know that.
Councillor Thompson, how long is it still possible to donate?
May 15th, they will close the website. So there's still a week and a half that you can continue doing.
Thank you.
They certainly surpassed their goal. I think last I saw they were at 190,000. The goal was 175. And so many residents and groups are continuing to fundraise.
And I did try and contribute on the website, and if there are people out there like me who are not that great at doing this, is there actually a Team Aurora link?
Yes.
So you go on, and there's a Team Aurora link.
I will forward it to you, and then that way, if anybody does contact you, they can certainly go through that, or if they wish, they can contact myself, and I will provide them with the link. Happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, support Team Aurora. Okay, are we done? Sorry, Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two things. I'll be brief. I would just like to make the public aware and extend congratulations to their Royal Highnesses, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, on the birth of their daughter, Princess Charlotte. I think it's wonderful.
Diana.
Oh, well, yeah, Princess Charlotte. Diana. And on a slightly more solemn note, I'd like to just acknowledge that today is the 70th anniversary of the Canadian liberation of the Netherlands during the Second World War, and I'd just like to acknowledge the past services of our men and women in uniform and the sacrifices they make for our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It looks like we're ready to move into closed session.
So we need a motion to move into closed session following adjournment to consider personal information, because it's on the screen.
We're going to adjourn first and then a motion?
No, we need a motion to go into closed session following adjournment.
We need a motion to go into closed session to discuss one item pertaining to personal matters and following adjournment. Councillor Marcus? Okay, Councillor, I saw Councillor Tom first. Too much talking going on over there. All those in favor? Great. Motion to adjourn? There should be, Councillor Tom? I can't make a motion. Can somebody second the motion to adjourn, please, folks? Thanks, Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you so much for your help, Steve.
We haven't done it for a while.
Well, I don't know, how long has it been?
Well, you haven't done it